Okay, so I finally finished uploading all the guides I wanted to make on Darksiders 3, which means it's time for the review. While we will be talking about all aspects of the game, one of the main things we're going to focus on is the difficulty, to not just repeat the same thing most other reviews have already said. Hence the title, is Darksiders 3 actually hard and people just need to get good, or is it just poor game design leaning more towards artificial difficulty? So before we start, at risk of the meme, I will say that I'm a huge fan of difficult games such as Dark Souls and Bloodborne. I have been streaming challenge runs for quite some time, and I mentioned this not to advertise my own stream, cough cough, but to clarify that when it comes to judging difficulty on a game, I'm never quick to label something is too hard just because it doesn't hold a hand from the beginning and treat us as if our IQ was in the negative. However, it is important to be able to distinguish between actual difficulty and artificial difficulty. The quickest way to explain artificial difficulty is when something doesn't depend on your skill, something that no matter how good you get at the game or how patient you are, it will still screw you over in unfair ways. So with this said, we may as well jump straight into it. First of all, when you're playing a game like this that is more focused on individual combat instead of attacking groups of dozens of enemies at a time, it is very, very important that the hitboxes are as close to perfect as possible. Especially when on the higher difficulties, each random enemy can obliterate you with a basic attack, which by the way, half of the time you can't even see due to bad camera angles, lack of distinct animations, and sometimes even dust clouds completely blocking your view of what the enemy is doing. But with that said, people are blaming way too much on the camera angles on this game. They actually did a pretty decent job of adjusting the camera enough off center while locked on to make it bearable most of the time. There are of course exceptions, like when you're very close to a wall or in a bit of an elevated slope in comparison to the enemy, where the camera will get a little bit funky, making it very tough to see. So yeah, they can be bad, but not as terrible as some people are making them out to be. Just bear that in mind if it was one of the main reasons you was putting off getting this game. Okay, next issue. It is almost impossible to know when it's safe to heal because even some of the non-ranged enemies have 10 times the range any melee mob should ever have on any video game. I mean, let's just look at this again for a second. He is like 2 miles away, so you'd assume it was safe to heal, right? Wrong. The main reason this is a problem isn't even about the healing, but in a game where every time you die or reload an area, all the enemies respawn, sometimes it's just nice to run past everything and get back to where you wanted to be in the first place. But the fact that they can jump to instantly catch up to you and kill you in a couple of hits forces us to face most enemies every time we want to revisit an area, which can quickly become quite tedious, especially when those enemies happen to be shield masters. My god, I hate those things. Don't worry, we will be talking about those in just a second. Actually, no, let's talk about them right now. I'm all for enemies being given nice, sturdy shields to protect themselves with, but you know why it just doesn't work in a game like this? Because there's no goddamn stamina, which means they can block for all of eternity if they want to. I mean, just look at this. Sure, you can back away enough for them to lower their guard until you hit them like 2 more times and they go straight back into defense mode. Even if you get time to do a charged triangle attack with the hammer, which usually you won't because there will be other enemies around to interrupt your attacks, but if you do, this won't even break their guard, it simply knocks them back. And also, if that wasn't enough, these specific enemies can also keep on calling more allies in every time they're not blocking as many times as they like, who also have inherited part of the skill of being blockmasters. This is no longer referring to difficulty, they're pretty easy to kill, however they can be very tedious, as I was saying, if you need to do it every single time you die or every time you want to revisit that area. The only other thing that I can think of that is borderline artificial difficulty in this game is that sometimes there's a lot of groups of mobs at the same time attacking you, which is very unfair on apocalyptic difficulty when their attacks are quite spammy. But that's pretty much it. Now we have that out the way, I can praise what a great job they did at making the game challenging. Even after spending way too many hours playing the game to record all the guides and trophies, I still found myself wanting to go back and start a fresh playthrough on the hardest difficulty just to beat the game without relying on the Havoc mode, just to really learn the movesets of all the bosses, which is what gave me the initial idea for this video in the first place. In many games, quite honestly, I don't even bother upgrading weapons or even messing around to optimize my build until maybe very late game, if at all, simply because it never feels like you really need to. But in Darksiders 3, I was going back to upgrade and even going out of my way to get the enhancement upgrades as soon as I could, which is a great feeling to actually feel immersed in a game enough to care about those sort of things. So that is enough about the difficulty. In summary, apocalyptic difficulty can be very fun if you're willing to put in the time, but if you're more of a casual player, just wants to enjoy it, don't feel the need to stress yourself out as it does have its issues still. Just enjoy the game. which, by the way, even on the easier difficulties, this isn't a cakewalk compared to some of the other games that are being released. So moving on, for the overall feel of the gameplay outside of combat, it's fantastic. I love the feeling you get when you come back to a water area, for example, where previously you had to swim through or trek along the bottom, and then you return later with the ability to walk on water. It gives you a true sensation that our character is making progress and becoming more and more powerful as we play on. And though at its core it could be classed as a Metroidvania, I'm not even referring to that. It's more about using your later gained abilities just for comfort, like in the previous water example, or to clear certain gaps that previously you had to walk all the way around and now you can just jump across, and stuff as simple as that. For the completionist, there are plenty of collectibles and upgrades to look for. The exploration isn't bad considering it's not really a fully open world game. Most secret pathways, while hidden pretty well, usually only lead to 1 or 2 more rooms with a treasure hidden at the end. Not usually entire new areas for us to explore. The most exciting thing you can hope to find on your adventures off the main path are optional mini-bosses called the Chosen, who drop the essence of the Chosen, which are probably the most rare collectible in the game, which are required if we want to upgrade our enhancements to max level. While some of the puzzles were interesting at first, most of them simply repeat themselves in some shape or form throughout the game, making them not very unique, and we quickly feel lack of excitement when another puzzle room comes around. You can't help but to think they kind of just run out of ideas halfway through, and then Bob from PR said, "Hey, you know what we should do? We should put more of those elemental eating bugs in every room. People love those." The voice acting and sound effects are fine. They don't stand out from the crowd in any way, but it's nothing to complain about.
Yes. Just another pawn who will never understand the game into which he's been played.
As for the music, it can actually be really good in some of the areas. It really adds to the vibes that the area is trying to give you, especially if you're playing with headphones on or a decent surround sound. Now for this next part, it may only be because I'm playing on console as I don't have a gaming PC, but come on, did you think I was going to finish this review without mentioning the load times on this game? As an example, look how many load times there are one after another in just this area. It's insane. Even if I am playing on the basic PS4, that is no excuse. We have games with way better graphics that don't have even close to this many load times. And if the game has been released for this console, it should be working just fine on this console. Heck, I even went a step further and tried to see how many load times I could possibly get in the space of 2 minutes. I will speed up the footage to save time and make this less boring, but let's check it out, shall we? And yes, it is true that I obviously looked for a specific route which involved the most load times I could possibly find. But come on, really, this just seems too much. Then going back the exact same way I literally just came from a second ago is even worse. Here I straight up thought the game just gave up after a while. 6 load screens in the space of 2. God damn it, make it 7. So now comes the part I always hate the most about reviews, the final conclusion. I really feel like there is no final conclusion for this game as it stands. While most of the stuff I had to say about it was negative, it's mainly because it has such potential to be an amazing game, and I guess in a way it kind of already is. I personally had so much fun playing that I was able to overlook most of the negatives except for the loading issues, which was just a little bit too much sometimes. So I'd rather you guys just draw your own conclusions from this information in the video, but if I had to end this on a final note, I'd say I would definitely still buy this game again, even after knowing all the flaws it has. So that is everything. Wait, what? You want a score from 1 to 10? Oh man, solid 7. So for those of you who already played the game, what do you guys think of it so far? And for those of you who haven't, hopefully this information helps you lean towards one way or another and make a more informed decision of whether to purchase it or not.